सेम इथं काय असणार आहे, I2 इक्वल टू कॉन्स्टंट H आणि इथं सुद्धा H असेल, राईट. हे H कोणासाठी आहे, 2 म्हणजे करंट 2 साठी आणि करंट 1 साठी, त्यामुळे H21 इंटू I1 प्लस इथे H पहा एकासाठी आहे I2 करंट साठी आणि V2 व्होल्टेज साठी, त्यामुळे इथं काय H22 लक्षात घ्या, H22 V2 लक्षात घ्या. अशा प्रकारे आपण हे यूज केले, म्हणजेच V1 which is equal to H11 I1 प्लस H12 V2, राईट. आणि इथं I2 साठी H21 इंटू I1 प्लस H22 V2 लक्षात. Okay, so above four things means H11, H12, H21 and H22 that are called as hybrid thing, right? So this is nothing but a hybrid parameter which we have to be calculated. Okay, now we have to be find out the particular value, means what do you mean by H11, what do you mean by H12, what do you mean by H21 and what do you mean by H22, that we have to be calculated in the next slide, right? So इथपर्यंत लक्षात आलंय का?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
See, there are four things. See, according to the equation, we know that first equation is nothing but a V1 which is equal to H11 I1 plus H12 V2, right? This is the thing. So see, when we have to be calculate, consider as a H11 ही parameter जर काढायची असेल ना तर other factor 0 करावा लागेल, right? So when we have to be calculate the H11 parameter, in that case we have to be taking the other parameter as a 0. So in this case other parameter is nothing but a V2. So in this case we have to be making as a V2 equal to 0. V2 0 indicate that 0 into H12, that is also 0, right? So your equation is coming H11 I1 which is equal to V1, right? So this thing, see, V1 which is equal to H11 I1 plus H12 V2, in that equation we have making V2 is equal to 0, right? V2 0 indicate that all the term H12 into V2 that becomes 0, right? The term only remaining is that V1 which is equal to H11 I1, right? So to find the H11, H11 into I1 which is equal to V1. So H11 is equal to V1 upon I1, right? H11 equal to V1 upon I1. When it is, we have to be tell V2 as a 0. So here V2 is equal to 0. हे लक्षात आलं का? इक्वेशन कसं येतंय लक्षात येतंय का? लक्षात घ्या दिलेले जे इक्वेशन आहे ना V1 चं. So in with respect to V1 equation, we have to be known that V1 which is equal to H11 I1 plus H12 V2, right? During that equation, if we have to be find out the any value, right? See, if we have to be consider as a H11 find out the H1, we have to be making other parameter as a 0. So to making other parameter 0, we have to be use the V1, sorry, voltage or current only 0. That should be needed. That's why we have making V2 as a 0. So this parameter should be this 0 into 0. So that is a 0. So V1 which is equal to H11 I1. So H11 is equal to V1 upon I1. This multiply going another side as a divided. So H11 is nothing but a V1 upon I1. Okay. And when that coming, we have to be put out the V2 as a 0, right? Okay, so to find out the now according to this equation, two parameter we have to be find out the H1. Now if we have to be find out the H1 to V2, for that purposes, see, for that purposes we have to be making other parameter as a 0. So in that case, making I1 which is equal to 0, right, in this equation, which indicate that this and this goes as a 0, right? So see here, make I1 as a 0, right? In this equation I1 as a 0. So 0 into H11 it is a 0. So V1 equal to H1 to V2, right? V1 which is equal to H1 to V2, right? So H12 is equal to V1 upon V2, right? The multiply आहे ते पलीकडे जाऊन divided होईल, right? So H12 equal to V1 upon V2, कारण हे तर 0 झाले, right? V1 upon V2, right? H12 equal to V1 and V2. When it is happen, when we have to be making a I1 as a 0. Okay. See, for the equation number 6 indicate that this equation, right? This equation, right? This is nothing but I2 equation. So for that equation, it is nothing but I2 equal to H21 I1 plus H22 V2. This is the equation. For that equation, to find out the H21, right? To find out the H21, we have to be making other parameter, right? Other parameter as a voltage or current, that is a voltage. So it makes 0. So for the finding out this one, we have to be make V2 as a 0. So it 0 indicate that total thing should be 0, right? So 0. So that's why I2 equal to H21 I1. It is only remaining. I2 equal to H21 I1 only remaining, right? So to find out the H21, we have to be multiplied by I1 going on another side as a divided. So H21 is equal to I2 divided by I1. Okay. When that coming, we have making V2 is equal to 0. When V2 equal to 0, right? This will be happen. See, in that equation, V2 is 0. Now to find out, we have to be find out the H21. Now in this equation, if we have to be find out the H22, right? To find out the H22, we have to be making I1 as a 0, right? So for the equation number 6, I1 making 0 indicate that whole term should be 0, right? Whole term should be this term should be 0, right? So I2 equal to, so term is coming I2 equal to H22 V2. I2 equal to H22 V2. Now H22 is nothing but I2, this multiply going as a divided. H22 is nothing but I2 divided by V2, right? I2 divided by V2. But when that term coming, we have making I1 as a equal to 0. So I1 becomes 0 only when we have to find out the H22. So in the equation, we have to be find out the four thing, that is H11, H12, H21 and H22, right? These four are nothing but a hybrid parameter of the transistor. Okay. Now see, we have to be seen the, how the particular transistor model should be considered as a hybrid equivalent circuit, right? See, the complete hybrid equivalent circuit consists of two port. We know that two port, what it indicate that input as well as output port, right? So hybrid, any of the hybrid equivalent circuit, it contain two port, that is one of the input port, other is output port, right? So it have two equivalent circuit, one is input equivalent circuit, other is output equivalent circuit, right? So we have to be seen the first, that is hybrid input equivalent circuit. So for the hybrid input equivalent circuit, it indicate that, see, hybrid input equivalent circuit indicate that this is the thing, right? Input equivalent circuit indicate that this input parameter, right? This input port parameter indicate that your hybrid input equivalent circuit, right? One minute. पुढचा पार्ट घेतो आपण उद्या आधी, right? See, we have discussed the thing that is a what do you mean by hybrid parameter, right? So we have to know about the hybrid parameter. See, what do you mean by hybrid parameter? Hybrid parameter indicate that whatever the parameter coming with respect to the your transistor that have analysis of that parameter have the different things such as impedance, that is input impedance, output impedance, then admittance, then voltage ratio, then current ratio. Means all of the parameters coming with respect to a transistor that are not only voltage, that are not only current, that are not only resistance, that are not only admittance, right? That are the different, means that are hybrid parameter, right? That's why the parameter coming with respect to transistor, they have different. That's why the parameter of the transistor are called as hybrid parameter, right? So hybrid, why the name is hybrid? Hybrid indicate that there are different variety, right? Different variety, that's why it is called as hybrid, right? So different variety indicate that this parameter should be mixed parameter, right? So the output or the whatever the output equation coming, that should be mixed, right? Means dimension of it should be mixed. That's why it is called as hybrid parameter. Now see, hybrid indicate that whatever the output coming, that should be somewhat, sometimes impedance, admittance, then sometimes voltage ratio, sometimes current ratio, that is a pure ratio. So hybrid indicate that output or output parameter coming with respect to transistor that have different uh, different dimension. That's why it is called as hybrid parameter, right? So we have to be calculate the hybrid parameter. So hybrid, during the hybrid parameter we have calculated here. See, h11 is nothing but a v1 upon i1, right? So see here, h11 is nothing but a v1 upon i1. We know that v upon I is nothing but a resistance, right? So h11 parameter have the unit of the ohm, because v upon I indicate that it is a resistance. Okay, h22 h22 is h22 is nothing but it is I2 divided by V2. So it is opposite to that of resistance, right? So opposite to that of resistance, it is called as admittance, and unit of it opposite to ohms. ओहमच्या उलट पहा, ओ इकडून पहा, ओहम ते महो, म्हणजे उलट युनिट झालं, right? See, h22 is nothing but I2 divided by V2. It is unit of its mohos, right? Admittance unit. Then h12 is nothing but h12 is nothing but h12 is nothing but a v1 upon v2. So it is nothing but a voltage ratio. But which type of this voltage ratio? See, which type of this voltage ratio? See, if the output divided by input, it is the forward ratio. But v1 upon v2 means input divided by output, it is a reverse, right? So it is nothing but a, see, reverse voltage ratio. v1 upon v2, it is a reverse voltage ratio. लक्षात घ्या, कधीही कुठला रेशो इन द फॉर्म ऑफ आउटपुट डिवाइडेड बाय इनपुट पाहिजे, म्हणजेच v2 डिवाइडेड बाय v1 पाहिजे. जर इट शुड बी ऑपोजिट, that is v1 upon v2, it is nothing but input divided by output, so it should be called as reverse voltage ratio, right? So see, another parameter h21. h21 is nothing but I2 divided by I1. So I2 indicate that output current, I1 indicate that input current. So output divided by input, that's why it is called as forward current ratio, right? Forward current ratio. So I2 divided by 1, it is a forward current ratio. So any of the ratio doesn't have any dimension, right? So it is a dimensionless, right? It doesn't have the any unit, right? So v1 upon v2 and the I2 upon I1, that doesn't have the any of the unit, right? So see, phi it is called as hybrid parameter. त्याचा आन्सर येत आहे पहा. h1 कसं आलं, ओहम मध्ये आलं. h22 कसं आलं, मोह मध्ये आलं. h12 कसं आलं, रिव्हर्स व्होल्टेज रेशो आला, आणि h21 काय आलं, फॉरवर्ड करंट रेशो. म्हणजे एक ही टर्म यातली सेम नाही, लक्षात घ्या. त्यामुळे याला हायब्रिड म्हटलं जातं. ओके, now see, we have seen the next point, that is hybrid equivalent circuit. What do you mean by hybrid equivalent circuit? So see, we know that two-port network, what it indicate that, two indicate that one is input port, other is output port, right? So any of the hybrid equivalent circuit have basically two port, right? One is input port, that is input equivalent circuit, other is output port, that is nothing but a output equivalent circuit, right? So see, in case of hybrid input equivalent circuit indicate that, see here, this should be related to the input part, right? This should be related to the input, right? So that's why equation with respect to it is hybrid input equivalent circuit. It is nothing but it is a input equivalent circuit. So input equivalent circuit have the equation which is equal to whatever the input applied, that is nothing but input as v1 voltage is applied. When input voltage v1 is applied, in that case current flowing, that is a I1, right? So we know that for the hybrid input equivalent circuit, the equation, as we have to be seen, first equation, that is v1 which is equal to H11 I1 plus H12 V2. Why it is equation C? In this case, see, in this case, what happened? Whatever the voltage applied across it, right? Whatever the voltage applied across it, it becomes the part of the circuit. म्हणजेच काय सांगतो पहा, ज्यावेळेस आपण ही डायग्राम पहा. See this diagram for the input related term. So input related term, see these two terms, two term म्हणजे V1 आणि I1 त्याच्यामध्ये असायलाच पाहिजे आणि दुसरं टर्म H12 पण याच्यामध्ये असं पाहिजे. H12 म्हणजे काय सांगतो? H12 म्हणजेच व्होल्टेज रेशो. कारण का ज्यावेळेस आपण हे कॅल्क्युलेट करतोय ना त्यावेळेस तुम्हाला लक्षात येईल हे V1 आणि V2 चा रेशो सुद्धा त्यासाठी लागणार आहे. त्यासाठी सांगतो तुम्हाला. पहा, see when we have to be discussing the two-port network, in that case we have to be seeing the first equation of the two-port network, that is nothing but a V1 which is equal to H11 I1 plus H12 V2, right? So this will be the thing with respect to it, right? So for that purpose H11 is nothing but a C. H11 we know that V1 upon I1, right? See H11 is nothing but a V1 upon I1, right? Means whatever the equation coming with respect to the input, that is nothing but a H11 is nothing but a V1 upon I1. See, is it right or wrong? That we have to be implemented here. इनपुटच्या रेस्पेक्ट आपण इम्प्लिमेंट करायचं आहे. त्यानुसार आपल्याला कळून जाईल की बरोबर आहे का चुका. लक्षात घ्या. सी V1 which is equal to H11 I1 plus H12 V2, right? So V1, when we have to be calculate the value of H11, which is nothing but H11 equal to V1 is this multiply going as a divided. H11 is nothing but a V1 upon I1 and H12 which is equal to this making as a 0. H12 equal to V1 upon V2, right? V1 upon V2, right? This will be the coming. Now see, we have to be drawn this circuit, right? V1 which is equal to H1 on I, right? See, V1 which is equal to, now see, V1 which is equal to H11 is nothing but a V1 upon I1. It is nothing but a resistance, right? So it should be written as a resistance, right? So V1 which is equal to H11 I1, H11 la multiply I1 असतं, right? Plus, right? Then H12 and H12 V2. H12 is nothing but a what? See, H12 is nothing but a V1 upon V2 voltage ratio. It doesn't have any sign, so it is become as a multiplying factor. लक्षात घ्या. त्यामुळे इथं काय केलंय आपण? C V1 which is equal to H11 I1. H11 म्हणजे V1 upon I1 आहे. त्यामुळे तो रेजिस्टन्स कन्सिडर केला, त्याला मल्टिप्लाय बाय I1 केलं. ओके, प्लस H11 I1 plus H12 what it indicate that it is a voltage ratio. So voltage ratio is nothing but it is multiplying factor for this equation, right? So it should be attached here, right? Attached here. And H12 V2 indicate that voltage source, plus minus, it is nothing but a voltage source, right? So total this equation for the input, how it is, we have to be tell. See, V1 which is equal to H11 I1. See, these things are in series. That's why V1 which is equal to H11 I1 plus, now see, plus H12 V2. How it is? See, H12 indicate that V1 upon V2, right? V1 upon V2 indicate that pure voltage ratio. So pure voltage ratio indicate that it is multiplying factor to the already equation, right? So it should be connected as a multiplying factor. So it is nothing but a H12 and V2 indicate that voltage source. That's why plus minus sign, it indicate that voltage source. So this is as like as hybrid input equivalent circuit. म्हणजे इनपुट हे जे इक्वेशन आहे ना, जर आपण V1 चे रिस्पेक्ट टू V1 इंडिकेट दॅट इनपुट त्याच्या रिस्पेक्ट टू जर फॉर्म केलं ना तर ते बरोबर येते. त्यामुळे this equation, first equation V1 which is equal to H11 I1 plus H12 V2, this is the become equation of your input port. लक्षात घ्या. त्यामुळे ते इक्वेशन इनपुट पोर्टचं आहे. कारण जर आपण सर्किट ड्रॉ केलं त्याच्यानुसार ज्या इक्वेशन नुसार तर ते तुमच्या इनपुटला अप्लाय होऊ शकतं. लक्षात घ्या. हे जर मी फॉर्म केलं कसं पहा, V1 राईट, V1 which is equal to काय असणार आहे H11 I1. H11 म्हणजेच काय V1 upon I1 असतं, म्हणजे ते रेजिस्टन्स आहे. बरोबर, त्याला मल्टिप्लाइंग फॅक्टर I1 आहे. ओके, प्लस प्लस H12. आता H12 म्हणजे काय, F1 अपॉन V2 आहे, म्हणजे F1 अपॉन V2 प्युअर व्होल्टेज रेशिओ आहे. सो इट इज अटॅच्ड मल्टिप्लाइंग फॅक्टर ऑफ द this thing, right? Multiply factor of this thing, and Phi2 indicate that voltage source, so plus minus, right? It should be as like as input equivalent circuit. That's why V1 which is equal to H11 I1 plus H12 V2, it is the equation of the input port. Okay, लक्षात येत आहे. अटेंडन्स घेऊया आपण, आउटपुट नंतर पाहूया. लक्षात येत आहे का इनपुट इक्विव्हॅलेंट सर्किट?
नो सर.
नाही आलं? ओके, 1 मिनिट घालवतो याच्यासाठी. ओके, परत बरं झालं सांगितलं ते, त्यानंतर आपण अटेंडन्स घेऊया. ओके, असंच बोलायचं बरं का, जर नाहीच म्हणलं तर नाहीच म्हणायचं. ओके, सी V1 which is equal to H11 I1 plus H12 V2, right? We don't know this equation as a input equivalent circuit or output equivalent circuit. We don't know, right? So we don't know this equation for the input port or output port. For that purposes we randomly selected as this should be. म्हणजे लक्षात घ्या, आपण कन्सिडर करतो if we have to be tell that equation we have to be used for the purpose of input port, right? So that's why F1, see F1, this is nothing but a F1 which is equal to, right? Which is equal to, right? F1 which is equal to, equation is H11 I1. So we know that H11 is nothing but a F1 upon F2. It is nothing but a pure voltage ratio, right? Pure voltage ratio. So that's why here H11 is nothing but a F1, sorry, H11 is nothing but a F1 upon I1. H11 is nothing but a F1 upon I1. It is nothing but a resistance, right? So see here, it is nothing but a resistance into I1. So F1 which is equal to H11 pure resistance into multiplying factor of the I1. Okay, H11 I1 झालं. Okay, see plus equation H12 V2, right? H12 means what? H12 is nothing but a, see here, H12 is nothing but a, it is the ratio of the V1 upon V2. It is nothing but a pure voltage ratio, right? Pure voltage ratio. So it doesn't have any unit, right? So it doesn't have any unit. So H11 I1, this should be coming, add plus means added to it, plus. Now see H11 I1 plus H12 is nothing but a F1 upon F2. It is the pure ratio. It doesn't have any sign, so it indicates that it should be multiplying factor of the earlier equation. आधीच्या इक्वेशन आहे ना, त्याला मल्टिप्लाइंग असेल, लक्षात घ्या, मल्टिप्लाइंग असेल, त्यामुळे काय असणार आहे ते H12 याच्यासाठी मल्टिप्लाय असेल, राईट? V1 इंटू V2 फॅक्टरच्या, पण त्याच्यासाठी ते व्होल्टेज इंटू मल्टिप्लाय बाय V2 आहे. V2 म्हणल्यानंतर तो व्होल्टेज सोर्स दाखवावा लागेल, म्हणजे व्होल्टेज सोर्स म्हणजे प्लस मायनस साइन, लक्षात घ्या. म्हणजेच तुमचं इक्वेशन पहा, H11 I1 plus H12 V2, F1 equal to, it is nothing but a F1 which is equal to H11 म्हणजे काय असतं, F1 upon I1. लक्षात घ्या, F1 upon I1 म्हणजेच रेजिस्टन्स आहे, बरोबर? हा रेजिस्टन्स झाला, आणि तो कशाशी, H11 I1 च्या सिरीज मध्ये असणार आहे, राईट? H11 I1 झाला, प्लस H12 म्हणजेच काय, जो व्होल्टेज रेशिओ आहे V1 upon V2, राईट? व्होल्टेज रेशिओ आहे, म्हणजे तो काय असणार आहे, याच्या मल्टिप्लाइंग फॅक्टर म्हणून ऍड होणार आहे, त्याला कुठलाही रेजिस्टन्स नाही, ऍडमिटन्स नाही, राईट? त्यासाठी हा मल्टिप्लाइंग फॅक्टर म्हणून याला अटॅच झाला. आणि लक्षात घ्या, तो अटॅच होताना तुमचा अदर फॅक्टर आहे तो V2 आहे. V2 म्हणजे व्होल्टेज सोर्स, त्याला प्लस मायनस असतं, लक्षात घ्या. त्यामुळं इथं इक्वेशन जे सर्किट आपण फॉर्म केले ना, त्याच्यावरून आपल्याला H11 I1 प्लस H12 V2 हे करेक्टली आपण इथं लोकेट केलं, म्हणजे सर्किट फॉर्म केलं. म्हणून आपण जे अंदाजे आपण केलं होतं की हायब्रिड इनपुट इक्विव्हॅलेंट सर्किट होतंय का पाहू, तर त्याच्यात जे अनालाइज झालं ना सर्किट, त्याच्यात इनपुट अनालाइज झालं, म्हणजे जे सर्किट आहे ना ते इनपुटचं तयार झालं, लक्षात घ्या. त्यामुळं तुमचं इक्वेशन 1 आहे ना, V1 which is equal to H11 I1 plus H12 V2, दिस इज द इक्वेशन फॉर द इनपुट इक्विव्हॅलेंट सर्किट. आता लक्षात आलं का?
येस सर.
ओके, अटेंडन्स द्या. रोल नंबर 1, 2, 3, प्लीज अटेंडन्स द्या. 1, 2, 3 नाहीत का? हॅलो, 4, हॅलो, आवाज येतोय का माझा? प्लीज रिप्लाय. Give me attendance. Roll number 1. Roll number 1, 2. आवाज येतोय माझा?
4 sir, present.
1 absent, 2 present. Okay. 3,
Present sir.
4, 5, 6,
Present.
6,
Present sir.
7,
Present.
8,
Present.
9,
Present sir.
10, 11,
Present sir.
12,
Present sir.
13,
Present sir.
14,
Present sir.
15,
Present sir.
16, 17, 18, 19, 20,
Present, sir.
21, 22,
Yes, sir.
23, 24, 25,
Yes, sir.
25, 26,
Yes,
27,
sir.
27, 28,
Yes, sir.
29,
Yes, sir.
30,
Yes, sir.
31, 31, 32,
Present, sir.
33,
Yes, sir.
34, 35, 36,
Present, sir.
37, 38.
Yes, sir.
ऑप्शन नंबर सांगतो. 1, 4, 10, 16, 17, 18, 19, 23, 25, 27, 31, 34, 36, 37. सांगा.
Hello sir.
हा,
Sir 10 present आहे.
10 प्रेझेंट. ओके
18 present आहे, sir. 18. 18.
ओके ओके.
20 present, sir.
20 आहेच की प्रेझेंट. ओके, स्टॉप करू.